Comrades and friends, I want to take this opportunity to welcome Comrade Anthony Hylton to Politics Church Nightly. We are streaming live on TikTok and YouTube, Comrade Hylton. So, Comrade Hylton is our opposition spokesperson on industry investment and global logistics. Welcome, Comrade Hylton.
Good to be with you, Kamala. Good to be with your audiences.
I am so happy to have you finally because, boy, we spoke to Comrade Andre Horton a few weeks ago and he was like, listen, you have to have Comrade Tony Hylton on because everything that I do ties in so well with what he does, so you have to. So I'm very happy that we've had this opportunity to talk to you. But before we delve into your portfolio, Comrade Hylton, you know that we have to talk about the constitutional reform. Oops, the phone nearly dropped. The Constitutional Reform Committee first, of which you were a member, are a member.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
because...
that's part of what I do. Yeah.
Okay, because that is where all the excitement is these days. So, Comrade Hylton, we realize that the report is now out. We realize that the recommendations that the Comrade leader and the PMP have made, they have really scoffed at it. Tell me now, how do you feel about what the process and what has happened with this, the process at where it is now?
Well, let me say part of the challenge from the very beginning that was pointed out both in the media and in the CRC itself is that the terms of reference came from the cabinet.
Okay.
So it's a policy. It was a policy direction, and as such, the whole structure of the CRC was designed so that it was an advisory committee to the cabinet. It wasn't an assembly, a constitutional assembly, or a commission of parliament, or anything like that. There are different options. If we were doing it, I'm pretty sure we would have done it differently. If we had formed the cabinet, I'm sure we would have done it differently, structured differently, so that you would have had greater input and consultation, meaningful consultation in the public, and not to have sort of tied our hands in terms of a structured approach. So the structure itself was part of the problem, which was foreseen from the beginning and discussed and talked about widely. But that's what we have one cabinet at a time, and the cabinet decided that is the approach they wanted to take. As you recall, our party leader had his own reservation about the structure. But any conversation, any discussion, any consideration of a reform of the Jamaican Constitution requires the participation of the opposition party in Parliament, because you can't have any reform going forward without the opposition party being consulted and a consensus being reached among the opposition and the government. So and of course, the listeners, many in your audience would recognize that constitutional reform has been the focus of the PNP from the 1970s. Through the entire decade, the PNP has focused on and resuscitated the idea of the constitutional reform and changing our constitution to make it a modern, living constitution that represents Jamaica of 2020, of the 21st century, and not as it was in the 20th century.
Okay, so I want you to explain, because I might understand what you mean by terms of reference, but explain to the listeners what the terms of reference is or are.
Yeah. The terms of reference is that guide that says you are given this task, but you have to consider it within these
parameters,
within this framework, within this guideline, with these guidelines.
So they basically wrote it and told you what to do, almost.
Yeah, well, we negotiated, we had strong discussions around them. Some of them were amended slightly and adjusted slightly, but fundamentally, they stuck to them because that was the cabinet, that was a policy direction from the cabinet.
Interesting. So basically, the cabinet is writing the constitution.
Well, what they did is to sort of direct limit it, and of course that becomes clearer in the terms of reference when they said they wanted it to be done in phases. Right? Phase 1, phase 2, and whatever other phases. I think they contemplated at least 3 phases. So in phase 1, they said they wanted to focus on Jamaicanizing the Constitution, meaning what they may mean by that is to have an instrument, the Constitution being an instrument that was passed by the Jamaican Parliament and not as it currently is which is as a council, order in council, which is a British instrument done at Buckingham Palace in 1961 or late 62, early 62.
So basically, this is what, because you know, when Mayor Motley did away with the Queen a few years ago, Andrew Holness came out and said that the republicanism, if Jamaica were to become a republic, it shouldn't be about empty symbolism, but phase 1 sounds like empty symbolism to me.
Well, this is it. I think the real, and this is why the leader of opposition has been very, very strong and very determined, because for this phase 1 to have substance and to be relevant to the people, it is really bringing home the court, the final court, that will have substance, because it means access to justice.
That's
meaningful
right.
access to justice. Right now, as everyone knows, and no one was paid any attention and look at the data, very few cases go to the Privy Council because it is very costly. It is very remote. It is very remote. And you have to get a visa to
That's
go to your
right.
court. So, you know, for the average Jamaican, Mr. Joe planting him corn and having him farm down in Lilliput or wherever, in St. Elizabeth, to take a matter, to get a matter, a commercial matter, that affects him, his property and his livelihood in fundamental ways, that he wants to have not stop at the Court of Appeal, but he wants to go to the three-tier, to the final court. The final courts see things differently and have different responsibilities. And it's important because it's final, not necessarily because they're right, but it's final because they're the final court. They have the last word. And so the average farmer, the average household person, the average Jamaican, don't have any meaningful access to the Privy Council, and everybody knows and accepts that. And so it still has to puzzle. Why then, if you accept that justice is being, real justice, substantial justice is being denied to your people, why do you persist in wanting to keep it in London, and at a time when you say you're going to move the head of state and move the king from our, you want to still loiter and hang out in the king's court? It doesn't make any sense. It's not logical, and it's incomprehensible to a lot of us who believe that you can't for any meaningful, and if it's not going to be ceremonial, purely ceremonial, then this thing of substance. There are other matters to be addressed in the reform effort, but they accept that it's important that we decolonize, meaning take back those fundamental institutions of government and governance back to Jamaica, where take it to Jamaica where it properly belongs.
Indeed.
We can't leave one, take one and leave the other.
One foot in and one foot out.
The other that you're leaving is a real substance. It's really what is meaningful and relevant to the people,
Exactly.
which is access to their final court.
Indeed. You know, I'm glad you brought that up about the final court because the Privy Council will become even harder to access with this new merit rule that they've put in place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which again must be, you know, must do violence to the existing constitution.
Right.
Which means, which reminds us, all of us, that the Privy Council don't have to listen to anything we have to say.
Exactly.
This is a we can't direct the Privy Council. In fact, if the Privy Council said, look, if they get up, because let me tell you what is happening, which I find really uncomfortable and something I can't live with as a self-respecting Jamaican. The last president of the Supreme Court, the head of the Supreme Court, the previous one, Lord Phillips.
Lord Phillips, the last, yes, Lord Phillips in 2009.
The previous one.
Mm-hmm.
He and a number of people in the court, Lord Huffman, who came to Trinidad and made a fundamental speech to the Caribbean Bar Association in Trinidad, where he said a few things, and it's there. It's on the website.
It's on BBC. We looked at it a few nights ago.
People can read it. He is very clear that the Privy Councils were remote from the local happenings, what's happening on the ground, and the social and economic setup. That is all part of our, and the cultural part of how Jamaicans live and breathe and work. And he's saying that justice, substantial justice, is not best done in that kind of remote environment. And he's encouraging that we move to the Privy Council.
We move away from it.
Move away from the Privy Council and move to a court like the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is region-wide, which is accessible. I will remind your listeners, if they didn't know, that I was the attorney who brought the Shanique Myrie case.
Yes, we remember that.
And that case, it turned out I wasn't there in the final stages because I was by then back in government and a minister in the cabinet, so I couldn't practice law and I couldn't participate in the matter.
Right.
But the reason I brought that case was because we had negotiated in the single market arrangement the free movement of our people throughout the region. And I was part of those negotiations.
Right. Yes, so because you were also the minister at that time.
Yes, I was a foreign minister. I was a minister, state foreign minister, but I went through different places. But I was in the foreign ministry at that time. And I negotiated, I was participant in the negotiation for the single market and understood how important it was or is for our people to be able to move and to move freely. Even though we had visa restriction, but we had carved out access to different countries for people to move unfettered and uninjured for 90 days at least.
Right.
And Shanique Myrie, my client then, had gone to Barbados to meet with friends and to see what the country was about and to look to see if that's somewhere she may want to move to in the future. And the treatment meted out to her was just below the standards that we expected in movement. And we had access. The real point I'm making is the access to the court was there. And remind us, your listener, that they came to Jamaica. The court sat in Jamaica. They came physically to Jamaica. And at other times, they did the hearing online, but more importantly, they came physically to Jamaica. And the matter was, we were able to try and to move the matter in part because they were here. Part of it was here in Jamaica. The British court, this Lord Reid, who is now the president, because remember, understand what is going on. Britain is a different Britain today than it was under Lord Phillips, because they're no longer part of Brexit. And all of a sudden, the Commonwealth become that much more important to them.
Yes.
So they remember now that countries like Jamaica matter. So you hear them saying, "Oh, okay, well, we're not going to chase you out." And in fact, we're gonna. When he participated in a conference here recently,
right?
Said he's gonna petition the British government to allow senior Jamaican judges to sit
on the.
Well, we had it before. We have former Chief Justice Zaka, sat in different periods in the Privy Council, but they changed that.
Yes.
And now they try to change it back again. So what that tells us is we are just subject to all kind of manipulation, depending on the whims and fancy of the court, the lords in the UK and the British Privy Council. So I don't know if any self-respecting country can continue to be subjected to and have a court of appeal over which they have no control. And this rule that you mentioned,
yes,
is yet another reminder that they can change this thing overnight. And in fact, they did that. We are not saying it. And when they realize that it looked bad for those people, and they say, all right, well, you have almost 90 amount or something, some short time to respond. Most people don't even know they could have any input in it. And all of these things, and it limits, therefore, the access of Jamaicans to the court, because in our constitution, you have certain matters that you can appeal to the Privy Council. In our constitution, as a matter of right, meaning you don't have to seek leave or seek the court permission. Once it falls into certain categories, you have you have a adverse ruling, or you can pursue an appeal
without seeking leave.
Without seeking leave or seeking any permission. Now they're saying, oh well, consistent with an argument they had come with some years ago that is taking up too much of them court time.
Exactly. And Lord Philip said that it was taking up too much of them time.
Yeah, them say, well, that's why you want it out. And then, of course, we had some cases with hanging and them things that then we don't want to deal with. And I'm just the man, them people deal with hanging in the court, so we can't bother with that. So what I'm saying is, those were their preferences and their biases, and therefore they change the rules in accordance to the composition and who's the president of the court, of the UK court. We can't be subjected to that who is the president, plus you have visa requirement, which I find so infantile.
Definitely. What I find strange is that Delroy Chuck is supporting this new merit rule as the Minister of Justice.
We tease him in Parliament and call him Minister of Injustice, but I think it's more than the thing. Like Delroy is a unique individual. Seeing the older he gets, the more
unique he gets.
Conservative. Yeah, and so that's a queer position. It's just really not supported by the overwhelming majority of lawyers in this country.
Yes, because I realize that the group of King's Councils have written to the Privy Council.
Yeah, so, that's not a view. That's not the mainstream view. It's a minority view, and it's just one shared by people like, Delroy, who gets more conservative by the day.
But the thing about it, though, is that, as you said before, it's a violation of our Constitution. Given the history of JLP violating the Constitution and the human rights, personally, I'm not surprised because, he does not seem to respect the Constitution at all.
Well, there's a real question today and previously, as you meant, as to really what is the regard that this current administration have for the Constitution.
Exactly.
We don't need to look too far to be reminded that it was under this administration, this Prime Minister, that the whole matter of signing predated letter of resignation from the Senate occurred. And the court, it was left up to the court. We disagreed fundamentally, but it was left up to the court ultimately to tell the Prime Minister that is unconstitutional. Delroy Chuck formed the view at the time that if a Prime Minister does something that is unconstitutional, he should leave the office.
Oh.
This Prime Minister, this government has breached the Constitution on multiple occasions, not least of which is the one the court just ruled on about the
That is it.
The DPP matter, in which that was rushed through the courts, to the Parliament without consultation of the leader of opposition. Right? You have the SOE matters that is still pending. Right? So and a number of other things, the NITS case, all of those are there. I think it's about some
five clear breaches of the Constitution.
I think it's 6 law they've got.
Wow. Can you let the listeners know what the 6 are? Because I think we counted 5.
Yeah, I would have to look back.
Okay, no problem.
The other day, and we had a good. It's about 6.
6 law.
We counted. Right. So yes, I mean, and I must say, and as I've said before, part of the where trust is eroded in the ways that it has during this administration, then you have difficulty where you need to have consensus on critical matter.
Yeah.
And I must say, when persons are questioning and critical of the leader of opposition, who is insisting that in respect of, say, the appointment or the removal of the president, the proposed president of a Jamaican Republic of Jamaica, or Jamaican Republic, that you have to have some agreement on who that person is, because you can't just have a simple majority, which is what this CRC proposed. And we thought that, you know, our history, when you look back at our history, we have appointed persons who are former politicians of one party or the other to very sensitive and very, very critical posts, including Governor General and Court President of the Court of Appeal, and they've elevated themselves from the politics and have acquitted themselves very well. And so there was a thinking after we said, well, look, in the first instance, the Prime Minister and the leader of opposition should have seek to have agreement. But we spent quite a bit of time saying, well, what if you can't find agreement? What do you do? We can't plan for a gridlock.
Exactly.
In the ways that the president, in the way that America's have to enter into gridlock all the time over their budget. Sometimes they can't have continuing resolution for years because they can't pass the budget.
Yes.
We agonized about it, and yet we came up with some solution that says, oh, look, okay, they have to have a move for agreement, but if in the final analysis they can't do this, then, you know, maybe you have to go to break the gridlock and all of that to some majority. But the leader of opposition, I quite understandably, is saying no, and I have to say that the perspectives from which he comes, which is that he, as leader of the opposition, was ignored.
Yes.
In the past, in the amendment to the Constitution and the DPP matter, and yet you have other matters where consultation is not meaningful. It just means you tell the person what you're doing, and that is consultation. And he said, no, if that is consultation, and in the context of his experience, current experience, that is how it works, then he has to insist on some safeguards. Right? So that is the discussion, and he has entered it. He has written his own views on it, strong views and very clear views, and it has to be taken into account because, you know, the number of breaches of the Constitution just simply does not instill confidence.
No. With the number of breaches, is it that they are reworking the Constitution so that whenever they do, they get to what is it exactly that they're changing now? That's what I want to know. Because the reason I ask this, I am scared. Is it a situation where they are changing the Constitution to suit the changes that they want to see?
No, well, let me put it this way. I would encourage the listeners and yourselves. What has been tabled in the Parliament is really an abbreviation of the actual report. It's not the actual report. The actual report is much more detailed.
Okay.
And of course, the minutes of the meetings will be made public, and those minutes will be informative.
Okay.
in terms of the dialogue and the exchange and the richness of the exchange and the arguments and the, that went through to try to emerge with something that could aid us in going forward. So it's not a case where they get what they want. I mean, they're give and takes. They have been give and take in the whole process and all of that, in the way negotiations go. So it's by no means a one-sided way they get what they want. It was because the opposition was there, we took our role very seriously because we, unlike the members of the committee, our role was constitutional in that the opposition is charged with protecting and making sure the constitution is robust and the people's freedoms and rights are protected. And I think we discharge that. Now, the fact that I think you may be going on where a person would be interested and want to examine, because the debate continues. It's not by any means over, because my understanding now is that they want to put it to a joint select committee of the parliament. So when we believe that is where, and if we have to participate in that, the joint select committee. And we'll insist that the public gets a chance to have further inputs into the whole discussion. So what I will say is that the innovation, what is new in the Constitution now, that bears persons' attention and their consideration, is the fact that they'll expand the Senate, to include 27 rather than the current 8 and 12. I think it's 21 now. 13 and 12 and 8. I think it's 21.
So they will get a 2/3 majority.
Well, conceivably, what could happen if the three independents sides with
the government,
with government, then they could conceivably get a 2/3 majority. The truth is, what was agreed, that's how the mathematics works out, right? But I must tell you, in the CRC, there's specific provision there that they will need the rule or the requirement that one member of the opposition will have to side with that majority is still there.
Okay.
That blocking one vote is still there.
Okay, I see. Because I was about to ask, about the president. I realized that you're saying that the parliamentarians and would choose the president. So what about the executive president? I thought that was what we were trying to basically rally for, where the members of the public vote directly for a president.
Well, let me tell you, that has a historic dimension to it. That's where the PNP started in the 70s by arguing for and insisting on an executive president. We recognize Mr. Siaga made it very, very clear that he was not ever going to support the executive. And he gave his reason. He gave his reason. But what was very clear to us, in as much as we wanted a reform of the Constitution so much, that we want to bring home our Constitution and to decognize our Constitution and form a republic. We said, okay, since we have to have agreement on this fundamental issue, let us make a compromise so that we can move move forward in some reasonable time. So we said, okay, we'll go along with the parliamentary system again, and there's some value in it, I must tell you, because it is tried and tested. And let me say this, that where the presidential system has a problem, in the gridlock is very, very a reality of your system.
Okay.
And with Jamaica is a developing country where we still are in the building phase of our institution, hence this reform to bring home our constitution, our institutions, our critical institution, our courts, is still in the hands of a foreign government or head of state.
Right.
So we're still in a formative stage, even after 62 years. It was still deepening and building and strengthening institutions. And I am saying to you that my experience, that my own experience, having gone to school in the US, lived there for quite a number of times, studied their legal system, worked on Capitol Hill, understand the politics. I must tell you, the US works because their systems are built, they're developed, they're strong, independent systems, and even at times when the politics doesn't work, the institutions can work without the politics. In Jamaica, if we had gridlock over budget, people, even in the United States, when they gridlock on people don't get paid,
I've seen that.
Problem. It's a problem.
Yeah. People don't get paid.
Yeah, in the Jamaican system, if that happens, plenty people, I mean, it's riot. Right? So even though the PNP has been partial to the executive, and I told you the circumstances in which we kind of formed some way to get movement. It's the same position we hold now on the courts. We're saying, listen, we're going to have to hold firm to the court because these people never. There seems to be a group, a clan, a group within the JLP that does not want to change the Privy Council. No,
we understand why. You know, I was moving to that next because Andrew Holness was appointed to the Queen's Privy Council in 2021. A lot of listeners are confused as to exactly what that means. So I want you to explain, because we read the oath that he swore, the oath of allegiance that he swore to the Queen at the time. It's now the King, of course. But I want you to explain to the listeners exactly what is this position that Andrew Holness has been appointed to.
Well, when you're appointed, the Queen in his case started with the Queen, the Queen part of the Queen Privy Council. It means you give advice to the Queen. You have to pledge your allegiance to the Queen. You have to give your advice to the Queen, and you get certain titles as a result. So the most honorable and all of these things come with the appointment at Privy Council.
I see.
You get that sort of privilege, and you get to visit with the Queen from time to time. Now, some people put a lot of store in sipping tea with the Queen and doing things with the Queen, now the King. But how does that help Jamaica?
It doesn't at all.
I'm not clear about that. And in the meantime, you have to get a visa, including him. You have to get a visa. They may have for him some quick service because he's head, but you still have to have a visa or some kind of certificate or so. Right. So I don't know how that addressed the fundamental issue of substantial justice for the people of Jamaica.
All right. Now, this whole vexed issue of the dual citizenship, how much was it debated during those meetings? I'm asking you in the context of the fact that Andrew Holness is now calling for certain changes that we were not aware of before. So to what extent were changes to the citizenship status of people who can serve? To what extent were they discussed?
Let me remind our listeners that one of the terms of reference and the basis for the CR's set of establishment of the Constitutional Reform Committee, which we are short titling the CR's, is that it had to. The basis was a 1995 Joint Select Committee report on constitutional electoral reform, and a lot of those issues we didn't seek to go outside of the issues that were raised back then, but that was over 30 odd years ago. And so you have a generation of young people who are seeing things differently and wanting to have different things and discuss it. But the issue of dual citizenship was addressed then because there was a recognition that it was unfair that only people from the Commonwealth, which is largely former British colonial states that could vote, come to Jamaica, so someone from Pakistan,
right,
Nepal, or some far distant place for which we have no real
connection to,
connection in today's world, but was by accident a British colony, Bangladesh, and those places, could come to Jamaica, reside here for a year, and then become prime minister under that whole system. And you have other persons nearby in America who are in different other places in Europe who are not part of the British colony that have dual citizenship but could not had no such privilege. And yet we know that given the proximity to America, given the data of the support comes difficultly from both Canada and America, Canada being a part of the Commonwealth. So for persons who had Canadian or West Indian, Indian passport, other passport, Barbados, and the other island, they could come to Jamaica and live a year and vote.
Yep.
Jamaicans having those dual passports were not disqualified from that. And that was the law. That is currently the Constitution as we speak. As we speak. And so when we came to discuss the matter in the CRS, there was consensus that we need to remove the barrier because the British Commonwealth people have had that privilege for decades, over 60 years from the Constitution.
So question. What was the difference in what Mark Golding announced from the position that was taken in the terms of reference?
None. There's no difference. We're working. There's no difference. In fact, the Prime Minister in his latest pronouncement that to agree that there's no difference. What he wants to introduce is a new rule that says, okay, that's fine for every other member of Parliament, but it's not fine for the leaders of both the Prime Minister and the leader of opposition.
But now, question.
But in our system, it's not the presidential model that he's supporting or we are supporting. It is a cabinet model, and you have people in this current cabinet that I know have dual citizenship.
I was about to ask you.
So
how
I don't know how that's square, but he's arguing for a special rule. And our only point is, look, if you argue for a rule A, why didn't that come up in all the discussion, that long discussion that we've had on dual citizenship in the CRC, which even at the press conference today, you'll see that they agree that the matter that the Prime Minister is now arguing for was not even mentioned or came up in the CRC meeting.
But you see, it shows to me, Comrade Hylton, that the Prime Minister doesn't even know the current Constitution, because our Constitution doesn't recognize political parties and the head of political parties. The Constitution recognizes that the MP that gets the most vote becomes the Prime Minister.
Yeah, but presumably he's arguing for a new rule to say that leader of opposition, which is in the Constitution, in the Parliament, and who gets elected by MPs, that a special rule should apply to them. Well,
but how can that rule apply when it comes from, because if we look back at how Andrew Holness became the Prime Minister initially as an MP, if he were a Commonwealth citizen that had a dual citizenship, how he would not have even known that he would have been the Prime Minister to give it up. That's my point I'm trying to make. Because the Prime Minister and the leader of opposition can be anybody from the MPs, just the person who gets the most votes according to the Constitution.
Right. You know, so but let us think about it a little. If it is, again, it's just really an argument of convenience because the leader of opposition have a passport by descent, citizenship by descent. His father being a British medical doctor who done tremendous job for Jamaica during the period. And his son was born. But his son was born in Jamaica. Now, what the Prime Minister is arguing for is really can't be limited just to the head of state. Look at the very sensitive position of Foreign Minister.
Right.
Very sensitive position of Minister of National Security.
President of the Senate.
President of different sensitive posts. I have an article, I believe, that is coming out in Sunday's paper. I hope everybody gets to read it.
I would definitely will read it on this program as well. But Comrade Hylton, look at the Prime Minister of the UK now. Isn't he also a citizen of by inheritance of India?
From India, yeah. And that's this rule that's obtained in England.
I made sure to investigate it, to research it. Right. And Rishi Sunak is actually a citizen of India as well.
Yeah, I mean that's how the law is. That's how the law is.
But doesn't Jamaica have the same law? I mean, if the converse is also true for Jamaica, where we tend to use we have the same laws in that people that born outside of Jamaica can basically are citizen by inheritance as well, or descent.
Yes. Oh yes.
That's how we get the footballers to come and play for the Reggae Boys, is it not?
Absolutely. And it's benefiting Jamaica in that way. So we say we have to reach out to our diaspora. Diaspora is very important to us. And we see that in football, in sports, in academics. We know Jamaicans do well. Kamala Harris is the vice president.
Exactly.
We all feel proud.
And she is a Jamaican by descent.
Yes, she can claim her passport anytime.
Exactly. We see it. That I was explaining to the listeners yesterday that if all they have to do is come to Jamaica and claim a passport because they are already recognized as Jamaican citizens.
Yeah, we will recognize that. The U.S. may have problems with that.
Yeah, but the U.S. is not a Commonwealth country, and we are governed by Commonwealth principles.
Right. Correct. You're correct.
Indeed. So, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the issue with the diaspora, because that's part of what we were discussing before you came on the program. How the diaspora feel about all of this, because, Comrade Hylton, I believe that all this argument and the political mileage that the GLP expected to score from this has backfired. What are your views on that?
No, it's not an argument that can be sustained, I can tell you. People will see through it. They're trying to confuse and muddle the issue. Saying, well, PNP challenge people with dual citizenship. I mean, but that was not the law. The law is, and that's why the opportunity, you have to follow the law.
Exactly.
And if you want to change the law, then there's a process for changing the law, and that's called reform. But the law, if the law, you have to abide by the law as it exists until you change it. You can't witch it away. You can't say the law is one thing, but you're going to do something else because you think it's unfair.
Indeed.
Then change the law.
Indeed. And a lot of the members of the diaspora are up in arms about how this is playing out as well. Have you had the opportunity to consult with any of them?
Well, I've gotten calls from different ones, and they are upset, and they should know, because what they know is that the leader of opposition was fighting for them to create more space and more opportunity for them to participate in the life of the country, right? And so all of this is a retrenchment, and you'll see my article in the paper. I was able to get a little more technical in that, and so I heard you want to read it on Sunday.
Beautiful. I want to touch on this data privacy issue now, where Daryl Vaz has literally breached the comrade leader's privacy. And as an attorney, what are your views on that? I mean, Daryl Vaz literally came on the radio on 2 different occasions, once on RJR, once on NNN, and listed out dates of when the opposition leader attained his passport, his visa, etc. What are your views on that?
Well, I mean, I'm told, I'm hearing that his response is that he got it from the belly of the People's National Party. I would want to think that that's mischief. That's one way of sort of trying to mix up and get people suspicious and confused, and we shouldn't fall for any of that. I think a proper investigation needs to be done, and to determine whether the law has been breached. How would he come to those very private information? I think a proper investigation should be done, and if he's in breach of it, then their laws, the Data Protection Act, have certain penalties in it, and those should be imposed.
I find it very strange because, as I was discussing before you came on, I mean, when you get a passport, nobody has data in it about what number passport this is, if it was your first or your second or your third passport. So that kind of information that Daryl Vaz exposed, because he said that he had seen a document, he had seen it, that's what he said. But that kind of information, Comrade Hylton, wouldn't actually be anywhere else but in PICA, for instance.
Yeah, well, that's the likely source, but that's the likely source. But again, I think we need to be factual. There are some points, some things you can infer, some inferences you can draw, some circumstantial evidence. But I think that you have to focus on where that information is likely to be. But we need a proper investigation needs to be done, and this exactly how did he come in possession of that information, and to disclose it. Because if you get private information and you publish it now, there's this issue about whether it's a public figure and what are the exemptions and exceptions. If it's a public figure and if it's in pursuit of broader public policy and in the public interest and all of that. All of that has to be considered, but I think we have to start from...
We have to start with the investigation.
Yeah, actually, where this information came from.
Mm-hmm. All right, I have a viewer asking about the urgency in requesting information about the certification of the statutory, the Prime Minister's statutory declarations.
Yeah, well, I think one would reasonably argue, and people are saying that all of this is just a dust up and a mud up to confuse the people and detract from some other issues, and issues that are long outstanding as to, what about the certification, who are the six. People are quite naturally concerned and are asking, and will continue to ask questions about that. We have to, though, make sure the Integrity Commission gets the space to do the work. Yes, I understand the anxiety of persons. People certainly would want to know.
Definitely.
Just like in the case of former President Trump, people would want to know, the court look at this matter before the matter of what happened during January 6th or Bush money business. They want to know before they go to the poll.
Definitely.
Similarly, I think people want to know what, if anything, the Integrity Commission find before you go to a poll. So all of these are issues that I think the public has an interest in, and will continue to be agitated to hear something, get some kind of conclusion on before election.
Okay. Somebody else is asking about the attendance records and how it was possible for some members of government to only, Tom Tavares Finch only attended 11 of the meetings, and Ransford Graham 18 out of the 41 meetings.
Well, one of the things about the committee is that This is all voluntary stuff, important work, but it's voluntary. And even in the instances where I missed some meetings, I think I was here for most, 37 out of the 40.
That is an A+ record.
Because it's important work, and I think everybody saw it that way. The truth, though, is that sometimes you have conflict, and the conflict is not necessarily even personal. For example, when I missed some meetings, it was because I had other committee parliamentary meetings that conflict with it. And so there's sometimes that you necessarily have to be absent. I would be in a position to say in every instance what the reasons are, but some of it are quite legit.
Interesting. All right, and I'm going to ask that anybody who has any questions, because I don't want to keep you too long. You've had a very long day already. I just want another we can go to 10:30, which is just 6 minutes more. Anybody else has any questions? Who instituted the gag law for the eyes? We'll know that already, Professor Wallace. We already know who instituted the gag law. We know that that was Andrew Holness. But anybody who has any comments, if you want to come in the box now, you have 5 minutes. We're not going to keep Comrade Hylton much longer. So
I thought you wanted to go my portfolio.
Yes, definitely. We want to ask. We have to ask you about it because you had your presentation recently, right?
Yes.
Right. You see, the thing about it is because we normally have more time, but the constraints. All right, no problem. So let us go now. Take me now to your presentation recently. To be honest, I didn't catch much of your presentation. All right.
Well, one thing I suggest is that it's online. It's in the parliamentary.
Right.
Parliament. Then people can go and read it. But we essentially the industry, the investment, trade and global logistics is a critical portfolio mix.
Yes.
It really goes to how we achieve growth and to sustain growth, meaningful growth in the Jamaican economy, which is critical if we're going to improve the quality of life of the Jamaican. Having economic stability is good, but it's not sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. And in fact, you will not be able to sustain that by just remaining stable. The debt is stable. You have to generate meaningful growth. And the levels of growth we've been seeing in this administration and what is projected out into the next 4 or 5 years, or 3-4 years, gone to the budget, is low growth.
1 to 2%.
2%. We really have to find a way to get out of that. And the only way to get out of that is with transformation. You have to transform the structures of the economy, and you have to give different focus and have a different mix of policy. My suggestion is something I spoke about in the previous administration, and today I urge people to tune into what is happening in Barbados in the United Nations conference.
Okay.
That is currently going on in Barbados. Around the supply chain. And to understand what I've been talking about supply chain and logistics for quite some time, and some people think it was just some kind of fad or some kind of joke.
Supply chain.
Fundamental. Supply chain and logistics are fundamental to Jamaica's economic growth, sustainable economic growth. It is also critical to our contribution because the supply chain is one of the greatest contributors to climate change and carbon emission. And therefore, in how the COVID pandemic reminds us of the consequences of having a broken supply chain. And you have a lot of instability, a lot of geopolitical things, trade war, even between the U.S. and China.
Right.
All of those things. We have wars in the Middle East with the Houthis and the Israelis.
Yes.
And ships are diverted around the Horn of Africa. All of those impact on delays. If you run a business and you have to get your your supply of goods and services. If those are unavailable, that can cause that, in the worst cases, that can cause your business to shut down and to be destroyed.
Definitely.
And even if it's not, if it's delayed, it damages your profitability and your ability to grow your business. By extension, if your business cannot grow, then your economy won't grow. Because that will have a cumulative effect on the economy. So the supply chains and Jamaica's ability to be a logistic hub.
There you go. That was the next question, because I have a viewer, Dre, actually asked what is happening with the logistics hub and where we stand with it now.
Well, listen, this is what I'm pointing out to. Barbados was just declared by the United Nations to be the head of the sixth small island developing states for the hub.
So they basically took that over from us.
Well, what I'll say this. I will say congratulations to Barbados, because clearly understand what we as a country have not understood, although we've argued for it, although all the documents, I left all of the information. The government, the study was done by the World Bank, the government, the cabinet accepted it. The government just tabled it in Parliament and left it pretty much.
Yeah, because they made a big deal of it as well. So they haven't jumped on it and now Barbados has gone ahead.
Yeah, well, it has gone ahead and clear. It's just strategic location. It's all invaluable. But the pirates knew. That's why they hung out here in Jamaica. It is so invaluable that really, it's congratulations to Barbados, but Jamaica's own opportunity exists, and we just need to move and to seize our opportunity.
I was about to say that Jamaica's, I believe that we, having the largest natural port in the region, we still have the opportunity to go ahead with it, because our geographical location is much more favorable than Barbados' location.
Yeah, the reality is we have the best opportunity in the Caribbean. That's reality. And we just simply need to move. And what I'm saying is, it's one of the greatest vulnerability.
Yeah.
A number of things are now causing breakage in our supply chain, or delays in our supply chain, or simply disruption of our supply chain. And when you say that, what you're really talking about is our ability to trade.
Yes.
And Jamaica, that small island, must trade. We're not continental. Our markets are not large enough, so we must trade. Most of the stuff we need for consumption and production, some 90% of that is imported. So we must trade. And if we're going to trade, we have to do so efficiently, and we have to do so with greater productivity, particularly exports. We need to earn more in exports, and the only way you earn that is by trading. And that is key to the trading and efficient trading is your supply chain and your logistics network.
I was about to ask you about the import-export, the difference between what they call it now, the spread. My brain tired. We have a shortfall in export.
Yeah. Our current account deficit.
The deficit, the deficit, the trade deficit.
The trade deficit has been widened and been a deficit, a sustained deficit. And the truth is, this is where our diaspora has made a meaningful contribution to be, so that we are able to. Because in my presentation, you will see, and I'm urging.
I will definitely go through your presentation tomorrow not tomorrow, Friday. I'll pin it. I will put it on my comrades and friends on the live. I'm going to put it on my blog so that you can access it.
What you see is that, as long as this gap remains, there's a vulnerability in our macro stability. So, as much as the Minister of Finance likes to brag about stability and on the fiscal side, the domestic fiscal side, it's also important. The external side is important to the fiscal equation. And if we don't address that, then it just remains as a gaping hole. And if for example, tourism doesn't earn enough to cover that gap, the import deficit, it does not. And so you have that deficit, but for our diaspora who contributes and help us to cover those gaps. Jamaica is vulnerable, and this is why our economy is so unstable and in fact introduces
low wage,
like
low tech economy.
Yeah, exchange rate vulnerability or instability. You get inflationary, the spike in our inflation rate. All of these are disruptive of our growth and economic development. So these are structural issues that have to be fixed, and the next BNP government is going to move with alacrity to address the whole issue of the supply chain and the logistic.
All right, I have a question here. The contract, the tourism workers and their contracts. I know this is not really your portfolio as such, but somebody is asking about the contract workers situation, especially in the tourism industry.
Well, what I know is that this is an overall problem.
Mm-hmm.
The overall problem of contract workers is something we have to deal with. It will take some adjustment, but it has to be addressed, because what you have is people working for long periods of time and are retiring without proper social security. Mm-hmm. And in the end, it falls back on the government in one form or the
Definitely.
other. The tourism, the insurance for the tourism sector, that's a positive development. Initiated, spurred on by us, initiated by the Jamaican Labour Party.
Right, I know that Comrade Alone said it was one of her brainchildren.
But it's a positive development, and that will, about the matter of contract workers generally, not just in the tourism sector, but in the security sector and a number of other areas have to be fundamental.
Indeed. Now I want to look at the big issue now of the economy and training of people to work, because we're hearing the government talking about importing labor. I don't get it, because they're saying that the employment, we have an all-time low unemployment rate of 4.2%, but yet when all the polls are done and Jamaicans are asked what are their biggest concerns, we always hear about unemployment and crime. So that simply means to me that there are a lot of people who are not being counted in the employment numbers. You understand? They're not being counted in the job market, the employment figures. So what I want to know is, how do we plan to combat this? Get more Jamaicans who are not even being counted, because I guess they're saying that they're not looking for jobs or whatever metric they use. How do we train them to take part in all the initiatives that you are suggesting? How do we train them to be a part of this entire supply chain?
Well, and that's the supply chain is not restricted to any one industry. It's across.
Exactly.
Industry, including in tourism and manufacturing. It really is about how you get the inputs, whether it's the raw material or the component parts or the inputs or the finished product,
right?
Into consumers and producers, and the movement of that both in and out of the country by air, sea, maritime, aviation, road network, rail network, whatever is the most efficient way to do that, because if you're able to do that efficiently, then your productivity and your competitiveness increase in significant ways. And so a key part of that is technology that is now being much more dominant, and things in technology like AI and machine learning.
Somebody just brought that up. How are we going to combat AI?
AI is not something to understand. It's like it's a tool. And like most tools, it can be a weapon depending on the use of it. So AI is something that is new. It is disruptive for sure. But the question must be, how do we plan to harness that to make it work to our advantage? What I can tell you, in the areas that I'm looking at, in in trade and in logistics and supply chain is critical in those areas, and it increasingly is emerging as really the X factor in driving competitiveness in it. Now, training, and so you talk about training, you know, what we have been arguing for from the time I was the Minister of Industry, the last administration, is more relevant, more industrial-led training, rather than simply using textbook and dreaming up things that you and doing hair and nails and these things,
right?
Which are not unimportant, but in the scheme of things, we have to go into the STEM subjects. It is true. We're not throwing away the arts because that's where the creativity,
right?
And we are also big on the creative industries as critical part of driving our economy. But we have to start look more at the STEM subject we have everywhere now to start to integrate sustainability, the environment, other sustainable practices, so that Jamaica can, in fact, meet our sustainable development goals. And a critical part of it is to address the emergent issue of climate change. It's real. We're feeling the heat.
Yes.
Jamaica, and unfortunately, as an island country, we're not the major. We're not the major emitters, but we feel the effects of it because we all occupy one planet.
Indeed.
And the truth is, we have to engage the global community in very much more meaningful ways. And this is one of the strengths of the People's National Party. We are an internationalist party.
Indeed.
We're to engaging globally and having agreements so that, and the only way we're going to address these issues, these transnational issues, are through global cooperation. And so, one of the weaknesses of this administration, I've heard of no trade agreement, whether bilateral or otherwise. They just ignore trade, and trade is so critical to driving logistics, to driving the economy, to growing the economy, for export.
So what has Albin been doing?
Well, he's trying a lot. I know that what he brings back, I think we need an audit will have to tell us exactly what he's bringing back.
I heard that they were recently in Dubai. Was it Dubai?
In many places, but I still say the question must be asked, what are the investments? We see some investment in tourism, but that has been traditional.
Tourism.
From the time we brought large investment in the Spanish and others, the tourism sector as an industry is doing well. In fact, probably doing too much by itself. And we need to, a country can't run on one economic engine. You need several engines to drive a sustained and growing economy, a robust economy.
That is true. And we can trade in the expertise as well. I mean, we're experts in sports and the arts. We can always trade with some of these countries who are experts in logistics, for instance, and also the STEM subjects, so that we can have our Jamaican people trained.
But look, I mean, the opportunity as I said, if we shift focus on our supply chains and how efficiently they work, their resilience and sustainability will go a long way in addressing some of the fundamental weaknesses in our economy and begin to drive growth and be competitive in our economy. It is my submission, and this is what I intend to, when we form government, to demonstrate that the hub is very important and can deliver for Jamaica sustained growth and development.
All right, I see somebody here who wants to ask you a question. Let me just... Richard Gray. All right, Richie, letting you in now. I just asked him about that a while ago, Radcliffe. Probably you never heard the answer.
Good night, Mr. Hylton.
Hi, Richard. 1 second, Richard. Radcliffe was asking if you're satisfied with the performance of, I guess, your portfolio minister is Albin Hill, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this person is asking if you're satisfied with his performance so far.
No, absolutely not, because as I said, he's just continued to do scratch the surface and do more. the fundamental changes that need to be brought about. For example, he has under his portfolio the special economic zone.
Okay.
I've seen no activity, no meaningful activity. I hear about changes, but how can you change something without articulating a vision, the way you want to change it? Nothing is perfect. We started it and we got it up and running. And in the passage of time, it is our expectation that you need to look at it, because like any other new institution, you need to take stock and to do a review over a period of time to see just how it's working. It was designed to work in a particular way. Is it working in that way? And what are some of the adjustments that need to be made? So we understand that, but nothing has been articulated. All we hear is they're coming with changes and making changes. And that is fundamental to driving to developing, and it's really the basis of an industrial policy and strategy for Jamaica. And that must work, that must be made to work. And it's one of the keys to our economic growth and development. So no, I'm not seeing any meaningful investment. Tourism minister is doing what he does for tourism. I'm not seeing that replicated throughout the economy in manufacturing or any other place.
All right, Richard Gray, you're up with your question.
Good luck, Mr. Hylton. St. Thomas needs a viewer. We have the opportunity to meet one time when I was at Yalas United Football Club. Yeah, sponsors. I remember that. Good, well, good. My question: is there any plans in the pipeline that you know of there for the Bowden Wharf in St. Thomas?
These are all clearing opportunities. Richard is the name, right?
Yeah.
This is all clearing opportunity. I mean, I've spoken about Kobe in St. Thomas and its opportunity for ultra-large vessels. It's another area. We have other places in Portland. So we have put Jamaica is blessed in its location and the port opportunities. And we can have different kind of ports to focus on different things. Commodities, we need a commodity port. We have a container port in Kingston, and that's critical to the trade, but we need a commodity port. And in the case of Kobe, that can be used for large, what we call the ultra-large vessels. Largely, which is mainly the oil carriers and some of the very large, because of the deepness of the Kobe harbor. So we have opportunities, Richard. It's just
why I asked that because I knew when you were MP you had some good plans for the Irish, and unfortunately you left. But I'm just asking because I know St. Thomas is in your heart and you won't left out if there's any plan in the future government. Regardless you're not MP, you still have
still near and dear.
And I want to tell you that a road to St. Thomas is not the same as a highway, which is what the PMP had planned to say.
Exactly. And I know, I have been to a couple of town hall meetings and we were furious about it because they short changes. So I know about all the plans before. So I have been to a couple of town hall meetings.
Yeah, so we have to keep fighting and agitating, but it's better than nothing. It's moving, but it's not the plan. The plan, if you have a highway, the highway is focused, meant to bring with it a logistic focus, which is really an efficient movement of people, goods, services. And St. Thomas needs that, and Jamaica needs that if we're going to develop and to grow the economy in sustainable ways.
All right, thank you for taking my question, Mr. Hylton. Have a good night. Camilla, thank you.
You're welcome. Take care, Richard.
I'm here.
All right, we have some more questions. Jack. All right, Jack, go ahead. Good night, Jack.
Yeah, good night. Good night, Camilla. Good night, Mr. Hylton.
Yes, good night.
Yeah, Kenneth Dixon from Cedar Valley. NN, brother.
Okay. Yeah, man. Long time to see you, alright?
Yeah, man. But we not down alone there, We there in the cold. I go and take it easy a little bit.
So I understand.
Yeah, but we need the help of St. Thomas still, in I coming, cause we need Baku Parish.
Yeah, well, I'll always, I will never leave St. Thomas. I may not be the representative, but I'll always remember and do what I can. You must know, and the listeners should know, that the bridge in the Yalas was never built by the chill people.
Yes.
Dr. Frank Thomas built that, left that there when we lost office. the bridge material was already on the ground.
Yeah, me know that, man. Remember, say, we and you used to do it, you know, day after day, you know, night after night, you know.
Yes. So
Yeah, man, and
we know what's strategic for St. Thomas, and we never leave. We never leave. Then the next administration, even as minister, will continue to fight for St. Thomas and to include it into overall development.
yeah, man, because we need the help up there with the farmers, them, you know, with the coffee. Because you know, see how hungry that we have up there, you know, the little coffee and stuff, and we not see nothing. We not see nothing. Even when they them vote, you know, one little man up there, but if them vote, me, they don't see him, so me don't know. We sorry for them still don't vote. We need some help up there, you know, we need some help, because we need back the parish.
Yes. Right,
So, what?
We'll continue to work, but we need to work on all levels. We need to work to continue at all levels.
Yeah, man, we are doing best, man. We are doing best, but, you know, enough for help we can get, you know, see how the stronger we be.
All right, my brethren. I was up in...
Yeah, man, so... Yeah, man, big up yourself, man. We link up one at a time.
All right.
All right, my boss. Take it easy.
Thank you, Jack. All right, one more person. Auntie of Jamaica. Okay, Auntie of Jamaica. This is a very interesting name. Welcome, Auntie of Jamaica. She's not coming in as yet. I'm not sure. But before she comes in, Comrade Hylton, I forgot, I wanted to talk to you about your constituency now and the fact that these labor rights are targeting part of your constituency for the parish of Portmore.
Well, I mean, where they are, the truth is, when I look at the boundary, it meets my boundary. There's no real incursion on it from the boundary lines that we saw.
So you won't lose any of your residents?
No, and if it is, it's not substantial. But I don't see any loss.
Okay, because I realized that they were trying to incorporate part of Ferry, and I know that your constituency comes down to Ferry.
Yeah, so no, we don't. We write them. They stay in the boundary runs along the river and the different sides of the river. Usually, that's the way you form the boundaries, the borders.
Right.
They're not encroaching, so no, it's not. We won't have any significant loss. I'm not saying it may not have some meters here or there.
Right, but nothing significant.
No. Sorry.
Another thing I want to ask you about is the Prime Minister has mentioned on several occasions that he is unhappy with how the city looks coming in from the highway, from Mandela Highway. So I see he clearly is trying to target your constituency in parts because of some of his utterances.
Well, you know, I have said to them, the constituency needs that help. But we put forward a proposal time and again. Most recently, about 3 weeks ago, I met with the ministry and articulated again the case for urgent input. It's not been forthcoming so far.
Okay, so you...
The issue with
go ahead.
It's New Haven, for example, like, and we keep making the point, public and urgent, in that we have one river that runs through Kingston, and that is the Duane River. And it is not clean, it's not desilted. And because of the lack of desilting, it is rising and causing flooding in the entire New Haven area. And I keep making that view that one of their responses, we have to relocate the people. I said, where are you going to really relocate them to? What we need to do rather than, because the more you move away, the more, and you don't desilt the river, then all you're doing is have the river chase the people.
Exactly.
So you have to desilt the river and train it and put it back in its course and keep the people safe from flooding and from disruption. And I believe that's the responsibility of the government. It's one river we have in Kingston, and they've done very little to clean it. And none. The last time it was clean is when I was entering the constituency and we went home. I urged the government to do some cleaning of the Duane River. And since then it has not been, and we've been out of power for most of the time, and we have got no assistance or no help.
It's so strange because that's one river. It runs in such close proximity to the Riverton dump, which is also in your constituency. Considering the number of fires that the Riverton dump have, I know the last fire that we had a few weeks ago, one of the issues that was had was the unavailability of fire trucks because there were so many bushfires and other fires around the corporate area, as we were in the middle of a heat wave, I believe. And I mean, one would believe that they would try to access the water from the Duene River.
Yeah, but we had put, when the minister, which Arscott was the minister, he put in a system and a water fire suppression and a water system that would include taking water from the river. That has not, my understanding, that has not worked. It has been left to fall into disrepute or disuse. And, really, I mean, I think an audit of that place and how it operates needs to be done as a matter of urgency, and it's something I'm going to urge. Quite frankly, it's a reserve. The entire area is a preserve for the government. I try not to get involved in it other than to survey and to monitor and see what's happening, because too much is happening that you really don't want to get mixed up in.
Understood.
I monitor it from afar to see what
from
is
a
happening.
distance.
But we really do need to transform it into a waste to energy site, and it's something I'm focused on.
So you think that it can be transformed into a waste to energy site, but I hear them saying that they want to move the dump.
Well, I simply asked him where to, because you have this NIMBY factor, not in my backyard. I don't know but what they really need to close the dump and to open a proper landfill, a sanitary landfill. And this is what my urgent plea. I'm in favor of closing the dump, because as it stands now, it is leaching. The things are leaking into the water.
Into the water, yeah.
And affecting the people and the animals who drink from it and use the water. So it's unhealthy in that way. And so I'd like to see close and a proper landfill open up, because the acreage of lands are there. So why they want to move it to someplace else? That's a good question. That's one we have to focus on, and it's an appropriate question to ask.
Boy, I don't know where they would move it to. I think that, boy, if they close it, where would you think they could move it to, especially in the corporate area?
Well, I mean, they have all kind of system, and all of them very, very expensive and unsustainable, or a relay system where there are all kinds of contortions they're going through to relocate the dump. And we have 100 acres of land set aside. A small amount of acres is being used for the dump, which, as I said, need to be closed and a proper landfill open.
Right.
And the land is there.
So the land is actually there in the same vicinity?
Yes, the same vicinity, yes. And so the contortions they're going through to relocate has more to do, to my mind, with politics than it has to do with economics. Exactly. Why? Well, this was a very, very interesting discussion, Comrade Hylton. I want to thank you so much. It is basically 11 o'clock now. So I've gone even half an hour beyond what I initially set out. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on. We have to do it again, because it's been a while.
Yeah, definitely. What blessings. And we'll talk again in the future. Thank you. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Well, comrades, that was Comrade Anthony Hylton, who is the MP for Western St. Andrew, as well as the spokesperson on industry, investment, and global logistics.